Welcome to Not Quite Right. My name is Ed.
And I'm Amanda.
On today's show, we'll be reviewing the album Detour de Fromage by the Bare Naked Ladies.
You.
And we'll be talking about songwriting. What makes a good song? What makes good lyrics? And what lessons can we as fiction writers learn from songwriters? But first, a reminder about the Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction, which is happening in July. Go to the website if you haven't already, notquiterightpodcast.com to sign up. We've had a really good response so far.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to also say hi to our new listeners. So those of you who've signed up for the comp, and I hope that you stick around and enjoy what we have to offer.
The response has been amazing, and we're now quietly shitting ourselves.
We've got some reading
we crunch
to do.
The numbers.
Lucky we enjoy reading.
That's right. Anyway, we're very much looking forward to it, and honestly, the more, the merrier.
Absolutely. Share it with your friends, your writing group. We want to see you all in there. Let's do it.
Well, speaking of writing competitions, we both entered the NYC Midnight Microfiction Competition, New York City Midnight, last weekend, which I really enjoyed.
You know, they say like the best way to get over a breakup is to just move on really quickly. Like I was really sad because we've been talking about the 250 word comp that I entered, and I was feeling really like confident about it, which is probably my first sign to worry.
Yeah.
But yes, I did not win. I did not place, did not get an honourable mention. And so we launched straight into the 100 word comp just to make up for it.
I think they do that on purpose. So you've got no time to grieve. You're just back into it.
No, how many stages? 5 stages of grief? None of that.
It's like a gambler's mentality. Just double or nothing, put it all on
100%,
red.
Exactly.
Try again. But I really like the 100-word format.
It's totally weird. Isn't it weird?
It's weird. It's not even a story, right? It's 100 words. It's a paragraph. But at the same time, I'm surprised by how much like rewriting you can do on 100 words just to get it perfect.
What
because
more?
You've got to squeeze,
more rewriting.
You've got to squeeze everything out of those 100 words. Each sentence has to be perfect, perfectly polished.
Exactly. And the thing that I struggle with most is that it has to make sense. You know what I mean? Like in your head, especially when you start. So for me, like if it's 100 words, you're going to overwrite that.
Yeah.
In, 99% of cases, you're going to blow over the 100 words and keep going, even if you're trying to be concise. So you have to edit it back. And so that's the challenge is like, well, what am I losing here? And most of it, even with 250 words, I was struggling to make my story clear to readers, and I was finding it interesting, people's responses to what I was writing and the gaps they filled in themselves. Like there's more gaps when you've only got 100 words. So you're really like trusting the reader to understand what you're even putting there.
Yeah, there's no backstory there.
No backstory. There's barely story.
And you've got to choose just a moment, like a moment in time that you can kind of reflect on. And I think your story did that quite well. There was a portrayal of a character indirectly through what was happening in the story, and just kind of a moment in time that was
same with yours, I would say. Like you literally encapsulated. I won't say any more than that.
Yes, that's true.
But yeah, like you really do. You're trying to just evoke a feeling very quickly. You're trying to convey some sense of character without actually really introducing your character whatsoever. It's good fun. I would recommend it, especially to anyone who's in a bit of a writing rut, or someone who's trying to write a novel and just finding themselves just, getting stuck over and over again, or feeling the pressure to maybe write something longer. If you can find a comp like this, or even just if you're self-motivated to find like a writing prompt that you enjoy, to pursue that and just do something short that's fun. I know it's energized me to do this stuff, and I would recommend it to other people who find themselves in that situation.
Yeah, and it's something you can actually do in 24 hours without
easily
really stressing about it.
No, I mean, sometimes it comes to you very, very quickly. And even if it doesn't, when it's 100 words, even if you're slogging away at it and it's painful and it's blood from a stone, even so, you'll get it in 24 hours. And it might not be your best work, but you'll have something complete.
Each episode, Amanda and I take turns recommending each other books or movies, or in this case, music that we may not have chosen for ourselves. It's a segment we call Get Wrecked. Today's recommendation comes from Amanda. It's the album Detour de Fromage by the Bare Naked Ladies, band that's famous for a few hits in the late 90s. But this is their 13th and most recent album. Anything you want to say about the album?
Well, I guess what I love about them and what I think's relevant here is that they're a band for word nerds. If you love words and wordplay and puns, which I love, and dad jokes, like they're full of that. Like, and if you will just enjoy it for that reason alone. But also they're amazing musicians, I believe, and very versatile musicians. And so for me, having been a fan since the 90s, there's never a dull moment. Like, it's not all the same. You've got stuff for any time of your life, any mood that you're in, there will be music that's appropriate. So I've loved them for that reason. I've got a lot of happy memories and a lot of like events in my life that I tie to songs, and listening to those songs just transports me immediately back to those times. So I'm a lifelong fan, and I'll be interested to hear what you think about this particular album, which I would say is probably not their best.
How do you think it ranks? Like, have you listened to, or I guess their heyday was late 90s, right?
In terms of like popularity, yes. I would say in terms of what I love about them, their heyday was before that. And they peak and trough. Like, I think every album has songs that are amazing that I love, and then duds. Like, I would say for every album, there's probably 2 songs that are just iconic to me, and then at least 2 songs that are duds. So like, it's very much, it's a spectrum there to choose from. And there's probably a couple of eras of this band too. So the era where we had 1 week, that was the Stephen Page era. So Stephen Page was a founding member of the band who...
What was his role? Was he the singer? Or
Oh, yeah. He was the lead singer, songwriter. Like, basically him and Ed Robertson were the key members of the band initially. And then, you know, there was some scandal and drama, as there always is in these situations, and they ended up parting ways, and Stephen Page went on to do his own thing, which I think was a loss to the band. I'm a big Stephen Page fan. I think he was amazing, and he brought a bit of shade to the light, I think, in their albums. And so there's, I guess, the post-Stephen Page era, and we're in that now. And so it's very different to perhaps what they were known for and what they were producing in their earlier days. And it is hard for us old fans, I guess, to get over that time because it was so good. They were such a good combination. But yeah, we're working with different band members now, and they bring different things to the table.
Okay, so we're going to be actually listening to the album and reacting to each track. So it'll be interesting to see which ones you like and which ones I like, and if they're the same songs.
That's assuming you like some of them.
That is assuming I like some. So I listened to this album, I think now about 5 times, because I wanted to not just kind of give it a cursory listen and be like,
no, you can't.
I think whenever you listen to, well, whatever your taste in music is, there are things that you gravitate towards that you find easy to listen to. And when something is not your normal style, I think you need to kind of train your brain to understand it. And so you need to listen to it several times. So I went down that road. But yeah, let's kick it off.
Well, that's a good start.
Yeah, you don't want to just listen to something once and then be like,
taste, everyone.
It's not for me. I mean, I was just thinking while you're talking, there is such a thing as dad rock. Is this mom rock?
What's dad rock, first of all?
Oh, you know, it's like AC/DC, say, in
Okay.
Australia, like things that old blokes listen to.
Right, okay. Excuse me. Then, by implication. Look, no, because I don't think enough people in this country love them like I do. Definitely, I guess it's from a time, and now you can go into Coles, my local Coles, and hear 1 week on the loudspeaker, which I do appreciate. And not just 1 week, by the way. I've heard a couple of other of their songs being pumped out through the speakers at various venues. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't call it mum rock, no. In Canada, I'm sure it is. I'm not sure that it is here.
All right, well, let's kick it off with the first song called Flip.
I could be a little devil. Do you want me to sing the whole album for you?
Yeah, we don't need to listen to it.
No, you don't need to. It's fine.
I could be a little devil, or I could be a little saint. I kinda like it in the middle. Is you or is you ain't? Nothing's indelible, everything is sellable. Whether you're an animal, a vegetable, a mineral, it's criminal.
Okay, so you seem to like this song.
Yeah.
What do you like about it?
I don't know. I love it. It's positive. It's catchy. In terms of the lyrics, probably this one is not up there with the others. It's not telling a story in quite the same way. It's just got that feel to it that some of their other poppier songs have.
Yeah, it seemed to me like this is kind of like a hype song to kick off the album, to set the mood.
It's fluff. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love it, but there's not a lot in terms of lyrics to really unpack there.
And it has like a 90s, very 90s pop feel, I think, to it. Like it does remind me of their others. Like, reminds me of the Big Bang Theory song, for example.
Yeah. Like, certainly was not my favourite song on the album.
It wasn't your favourite song. No, look,
God,
I think the first few songs on this album feel like they're kind of front-loading the hits. Like, they're trying to be like, these are the hits.
Yeah.
These are the songs we want to be the singles.
I read a few critiques, and that's exactly what they said. Like, oh, they're very self-aware. They're putting all their hits at the front.
Yeah.
And it's probably true. But to me, like, that ain't it.
One thing that I've observed about this album is its complete lack of cynicism.
Yeah.
And I think as a listener, you need to be, like, you have to be a very optimistic person, like, to connect with the optimism of this album. I feel.
Say that, but like, I would say that what I love about this is that it makes me feel optimistic when maybe I might otherwise not be. So I don't think you could be a full-blown cynic and love this album, no. But I'm a cynic. You know, I would see myself as like, they've got some great songs actually about glass half full, glass half empty and so on. But listening to this music, it makes me laugh. It's joyful. I feel like you can feel the energy that it was created in. And they just do whatever the hell they want. They're just having a good time, and you know that. They're not really trying to impress anyone. They don't need to. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, to just riding the wave of someone else who's having a good time.
A few of these songs actually reminded me of other songs. And look, one thing I didn't like about it was the flip bit in it, which just, it felt really cheesy. But
oh God,
a lot of this stuff is cheesy.
A lot of it's cheesy.
But do you know the Paul McCartney song Jet?
No.
I'll play it for you in a second. But it has the same thing when it goes like, Jet.
Well, sorry, #fun fact. Paul McCartney was asked, like, I don't know, in 2008 or something like that, like, which current band do you like to listen to?
Yeah.
Like, what are you listening to now that you love? And he said the Bare Naked Ladies.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
So does that change your opinion? I know you revere the Beatles.
I do.
And he said, and in fact he said, and let me quote it for you, I don't think John and myself ever had the sort of range they do.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's surprising. And in 2008 as well.
Yeah. They were his favourite current musicians. This is my dad's kind of music, you know. Maybe that's why it resonates with me. Like, I love this shit. Band
and
on
maybe
the
that's
Run.
why it resonates with Paul McCartney.
Maybe. He's like, oh, that sounds familiar.
Okay, so the next song is called Good Life.
It's a good life. Wasn't easy, but it turned out alright. Wouldn't trade it for another. Brothers and sisters, you don't want to miss this mother.
So tell me, what's that song about to you?
Okay, so I was going to ask, because the song to me is I guess it comes across as like a reflection on fame and the life of, like, you know, the singer or the songwriter, and, you know, maybe there is some emptiness about it and some regrets and that kind of thing. But I wonder, some of the references, like, I wouldn't have gotten into a fist fight that night. I don't know if they're real references or if there's a backstory behind this.
Well, this is the thing, and this is a huge question mark for me as a fan, because I would say that I mentioned earlier that there was like a pre-Stephen Page and a post-Stephen Page era.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of scandal in there. He was caught with drugs. You know, he was arrested for drug possession. Pretty standard, like, I don't know, musician trajectory or whatever. But I guess that was at least a catalyst for the band breaking up. But what's interesting is that we don't know much about that. So I'm a fan. I don't really know what went down. Like, I know that he was arrested. That was public knowledge, I guess. But because they're so Canadian and lovely, like, no one's ever bitched about each other, and so you don't really know what's happened. And in this song, which you say it's sort of about fame, and I hear this song, and I'm just speculating as a listener, but I hear this song as basically the history of the band and the history of the band from Ed's perspective. And so when he says, with the benefit of hindsight, I might not have had the fist fight that night, to me, I'm like, did you punch Stephen Page? Because that's what I hear.
Yeah.
And I wonder about that. And I don't know that because no one's ever said that. And so to me, that's like high drama. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, tell me more, because they never really have. They've all been very respectful. They've all sort of always been quite kind about what happened with the band breakup. And there was some acrimonious stuff that went down, but it was all very much done, I would say, in private, compared to, say, a Jada Pinkett Smith kind of approach. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know. I speculate that he punched Stephen Page, but I don't know. So if you listen to that as just a casual listener, it means nothing. But if you're a fan and you listen to that, that's like, oh shit, like here's the tea. Like, you know, that's exciting. I was like, whoa, they're finally saying something about what happened. But I'm speculating. I don't actually know. Okay. I may never know.
I think when I first heard that line, it sounded, I think a lot of these songs have a similar feel, like a country feel, country music feel.
Yeah, there's a bit of country, yeah.
And the kind of fist fighting thing, it came across as like, oh, this is like a country music type trope. Like, oh, I'm a man, I got into a fist fight, I got regrets, like that kind
I don't
of
know. I
angle.
feel like you can take most of this stuff pretty literally in my experience, yeah. I get you. There's definitely, and especially in a couple of the songs in this album, there's some real country music influence coming through. But there was a fist fight. I will tell you that. I don't know who it was with. I'm speculating. I think I'm right, but who am I to say?
I think just listening to it now, we didn't listen to the whole song, but there was like a rap bit to this song that is not that, it's not that great.
It is white man rap. I don't know what you were expecting.
Had a plateful, so I'm grateful. Had the gatefold, stayed sold platinum. Everywhere I'm at, sun arenas to the rafters. Laughter, happily ever after. Now I'm sat here looking back there.
I think they could have left that bit out. I don't know lyrically if there is some critical piece of information in there they wanted to put in, but that wasn't a great rap. I'll say that much.
I mean, the message was there, but yes, it didn't necessarily have to be conveyed that way. I mean, I feel like a lot of their stuff, and I know Ed himself has said, like, I write to impress 3 people, which is the other members of the band. And I think probably that's the bar and that's all they need to achieve. And I think you do hear that. And there's something about that that's really nice to me. And I think when you are a fan, you can embrace that because you sort of know, you expect it for a start and you sort of know some of the intricacies of how that dynamic works.
Okay. Track 3 is called New Disaster.
Stay tuned for scary monsters. Watch out for rising tides. But first, a word from sponsors. Might be a mess, but it's a hell of a good time. The river's dried up.
Okay, so we're talking about cynicism, and probably this is the moment in the album that gets a little bit more cynical than the upbeat openers.
Well,
there.
it's very upbeat cynicism, but yes.
I thought this is an interesting song in terms of the themes. Like it's kind of anti-capitalist, but more it's anti, I guess, fear-mongering media in the way that it's used for clicks and also as a political tool.
Yeah, I think it's the 24-hour news cycle kind of criticism that they're showing here.
Yeah, and it's very overt criticism. You don't really need to read between the lines.
No. I just wanted to point out that, like, no one else could use the word prestidigitation in a song and get away with it. But, like, you just bop along. You have to Google it afterwards, but you bop along. There's some good lines in this song. Like, I mean, this song resonates with me anyway because I guess I share that political viewpoint or that viewpoint of anti-24-hour news cycle kind of BS. And we say this having just been watching the live coverage of the coronation. But yeah, there's a line like, we got to pay the hangman, but that don't mean we got to give him all that rope or all this rope. And that kind of line really resonates with me. And I think this is them at their best when they do that, when they use their wordplay or when Ed in particular uses the wordplay to make a really strong point. And it's my kind of poetry. Like there's this esoteric poetry where you've got to sort of, I don't know, make your own meaning. And then there's this more literal kind of pun, in-joke kind of stuff that I guess if you are able to put 2 and 2 together, then you will understand it. But there's also that Billy Joel vibe.
I was actually going to say that bridge part was straight out of We Didn't Start the Fire.
Yes.
Midnight ticking down, time to turn the ship around. Everybody feeding ya, anti-social media. Fear, disappear. We don't need you back in here. throw the CEO in jail.
Love We Didn't Start the Fire. So like that speaks to me as well. And it's not the same. It's its own thing, but there's a real strong link there. I mean, We Didn't Start the Fire all these years later. That moves me.
Yeah.
It makes me want to do something. I don't know what. I've never done anything as a result of listening to that song, but like it makes me
It makes you want to go, grrr.
Yeah, I really just clench my fist really hard, like super hard when I listen to that song.
So the next song, track 4, is called Big Backyard.
Oh, God.
All I ever wanted was a big backyard where me and my brothers could play our guitars, gaze in wonder at the moon.
All right, so the pendulum, the cynicism pendulum has swung all the way to the other, in the other direction. And I mean, the first time I heard this song, I was kind of waiting for a twist, like waiting for a, but...
No, there's no twist.
But no, it's a very sincere song, and what you see is what you get. Dude just wants a big backyard.
I mean, to be fair, like he stated that up front.
He did.
All I ever wanted was a big backyard.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Look, this is a Kevin Hearn song. So Kevin was not an original member of the band. He's certainly been a very long time member of the band. And I don't vibe with Kevin Hearn. I wish him all the best, but he's got this folksy sort of side that I respect but don't click with in the same way that I click with basically all the puns and the daggy kind of in-jokes and stuff like that. Like Kevin is very sincere. He takes himself, it seems to me, takes himself very seriously. And so this song, it's nice. Like I'm happy to listen to it, but it's not my jam at all.
It reminded me of another Paul McCartney song, not directly, but there's a Paul McCartney song called Heart of the Country.
Okay.
And it reminded me of that because it's also just a sincere song about like, I just want to live in the country.
Want a horse, I want a sheep, I want to give me a good night's sleep, living in a home in the heart of the country.
But I vibe with that much more, and I think it's just because it's much more of a bop. It's more upbeat, and he kind of really just embraced it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some background for Kevin Hearn, like he's had some really bloody tough times. Like he's gone through his own cancer scare. He has one daughter who is severely disabled, nonverbal daughter, and he sings about her. And like obviously his life has been greatly influenced by the challenges that he's faced at various times in his life. So I fully respect him for that. Like I guess it's one of those things where like you do you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I really respect him and I really think that what he does is wonderful and I think that that's great, but it doesn't connect with me in the same way that the other stuff does. And I think that this has been something that's always been interesting about the Bare Naked Ladies, which is that there is not one sound you can pin to them. Like certainly there's sounds that you associate with them, like the white guy rap kind of thing and the poppy kind of stuff, but that's not them. That's just one part.
Yeah, I was going to say actually, talking about this album as a whole, one thing that I did like about it is there's a lot of diversity in sounds and styles on this album. It's not one note kind of all the time. I mean, there are similarities between a lot of the songs, but they do try to kind of experiment with different styles and different sounds.
I feel like that's been their whole career and that's what I like too. And I mean, I think it's their downfall at times. Like I think they experiment and fail, and I think we all do, you know, as writers, we experiment and fail. And I think they publish their failures. Like, I mean, maybe failures are a bit strong, but, and again, it's a matter of personal taste because what I think of as being a weakness in maybe a Kevin Hearn song, that's what someone else is there for. You know what I mean? And certainly, I guess there is this divide between the people who loved them when Stephen Page was part of the band. And it's a very, very, very different sound. You know, he had this real strongly melancholic vibe that he brought to the band. And you're talking about cynicism and how that's kind of absent in this album. And it really is. And I feel like there was that shade that sometimes the light needed. And so if you go back in time, there was this really nice balance between maybe the light and shade that isn't there anymore. And I think there is a little bit of melancholy and a bit of sort of sadness in the Kevin Hearn songs and so on, but it's not dark. It's like still quite light and airy. And I mean, in my view, that's a weakness. Like I feel like it could do with a bit more of the shade.
Okay, we're up to track 5 and it's called Live Well.
Look back at my childhood, what was he thinking? Scrapbook highlights, smoking, driving, and drinking.
So this was another song that really reminded me of other songs. So right at the start, that sounds a lot like REM.
Okay.
Just the instrumentation and even his voice in this sounds a little bit like Michael Stipe.
Okay.
And then the chorus hits.
'Cause I'm alive doesn't mean I lived well.
And that sounded a lot like Neil Young to me, just the instrumentation. There was a lot of harmonics on the guitars and even, again, the voice, very Neil Young. And overall, like if we're talking about like a country vibe, this is the country song.
Yes, this is the country song.
Smoking,
Absolutely.
drinking and driving. Pets
Whiskey?
in
Do they
the
say
back of a
whiskey?
wagon. They might, I'm sure they
I
do.
think they said it.
Yeah. So what's the story with like the country vibe here?
Well, this is the thing. I feel like they just do what they want.
Yeah.
You know, they're musicians. It's like, for me, when I'm writing, I'm just taking influences from everywhere. And you know, most of my influences come from absolute straight up trash, that I love, you know, and you're just filtering all of this and then producing your own thing. And I think when you're a rich musician, which I'm assuming they are, you're able to kind of just do what you want. And I feel like them more than others, it's like they just don't give a shit what anyone thinks. Like they're just very mature. Like they've matured beyond trying to make money, or first and foremost, they just want to do what they want.
Yeah.
And the money comes secondary. And I have a huge amount of respect for that. And so having like a country music influence, it's just because that's what happened to be influencing them at the time that they.
But yeah, I guess also the lyrics. So the lyrics, this is another song that is kind of about regrets.
Yep.
In a very country music way. But I don't know if this is, I guess, an authentic experience that they're.
Again, I
members
feel
have
like you should
experienced,
assume that, yes, it is.
or if they're trying to channel some kind of country vibe. Because
No, definitely
he's
not.
talking-
Not with these guys.
yeah, he's talking like times that I've been out of my truck, smoking, drinking, I've lost my license, I've been in fights, these kind of things.
Yeah.
I don't know if these are the kind of people we're talking about.
I feel like you can safely assume this is all genuine. Yeah. You know, like this band has been around for 3 decades, and I think, well, actually, I think they knew each other in at least high school, if not younger, but didn't form a band until a little bit later on. But I have no doubt in my mind that they were just, he's basically saying I lived a white trash life a bit there. Yeah. And he did. I mean, it was brief because, I mean, they didn't find fame immediately, but certainly now, like they have this song from back in the day, like one of their very early songs, If I Had $1 Million. And like they have $1 million now, you know? And so it's kind of funny to look back on that stuff. And this album in particular felt very nostalgic and very much telling the story of themselves and how they got to where they're at. That's how I read it anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so the next song is called Flat Earth.
I can't fall for any more. Watch me walking out the door. If I'm gonna believe in her, I might as well believe in flat earth. I might as well believe in.
So this song, like the first impressions, it reminded me a lot of like the Big Bang Theory theme. It's got that kind of vibe. Mm-hmm. Lyrically, I had some problems with this song. I guess the scenario he's describing in the hairdressers, and then the comparison with the flat Earth, it didn't quite make sense. So did I miss something?
Well, I don't know. Did I pick up something that wasn't there? Like to me, what I love about this album, like the Detour de Force, the whole concept is that it's very much a pandemic album. Mm-hmm. And so there's some songs on here that I believe are very tied in with that. And this is a really good example of that in my mind. And I'm not speaking as obviously the songwriter here and he can speak for himself, but I have read interviews with him about this song in particular. And this is a literal thing that happened to Ed Robertson. So he went to get his hair cut. There's a woman a couple of chairs down. My understanding is that she's spouting bullshit about like vaccines and, you know, conspiracy theories, and he's just there scoffing.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and so when he says I might as well believe in flat Earth, like she's not a flat earther. But he's saying she may as well be. Like, it's this conspiracy theory kind of stuff, and she's trying to sell him on it, and she's being very forceful in her opinions, and he's basically saying, no, I'm not interested. And like, I think this experience resonates with a lot of people, whether on one side or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I didn't pick up on that detail. Just looking through the lyrics, and I don't think it's mentioned.
No, and look, maybe I'm reading into it.
No, I think you're right. I think that's definitely the interpretation, especially when it was released. It may have been more front and center, but I think with that gap filled, it makes a lot more sense. There is a verse here, I think it's the bridge, that I really don't like the lyrics to. Because it reads like just awful poetry.
Yeah.
Time is a mystery entwined in history that shines so brilliantly, but my epiphany. is signs are missed on me.
Okay, all right. But I see your signs are missed on me, and I raise you I told her my sign was stop and she should quit while she's behind. Mm-hmm. That line I love. Like, she's talking about like astrology and whatever, and he's like, my sign is stop. I love that. I'm going to use that, even though I'm a Cancer. Classic Cancer. Anyway, it's a simple song. It's a poppy song. There's nothing like, I guess, redeemably like deep about this song, but I do love that it speaks of a time, and I feel like, yeah, it sort of resonated with me for that reason, because, I feel like in the writing world, at least initially, there was this kind of hesitation to deal with the pandemic. It's like, oh, we don't write about that. Like, don't put that in your books. And maybe we're even now far enough beyond it that we can. But the fact that a band was singing about like what's happening right now at the time was meaningful to me. You weren't hearing a lot of that. You were still hearing like, oh, she broke up with me. And that wasn't what our shared experience was. Certainly people were still breaking up with each other, but like our shared experience was something very different. And it's such a huge experience that you feel like it needed to be recorded and documented. And this was one way of doing it in a way that felt very real and sort of day to day,
I think we'll see a wave of pandemic-related kind of art in a couple of years.
Totally.
There'll be some nostalgia about it, because right now everyone has just been sick of it. Like,
well,
when
everyone
will it
was
end?
just in it too, and like having their stresses, and like, oh, I'm not producing art because I'm like stressed out of my mind because I've lost my job, or ticket sales have gone down the toilet if you're a musician because concerts can't happen. So I would imagine that a lot of artists were just experiencing it, and that is going to come out at some point.
Okay, track 7 is called Here Together.
And while we're here together, I wouldn't miss a second of the fun. Nothing lasts forever. You just say whatever and you change the song.
The feel of this song reminded me a lot of a band called Wilco, who are an alternative country band. So kind of like a mixture of alternative music and country. It sounded kind of like some of their earlier songs. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that the lyrics here were a bit less direct and a bit more enigmatic. I mean, there's clearly a story being told of enjoying the moment, but exactly what's happened in this relationship is not laid out. Like, you've got to read between the lines, unless you're
a fan and you know the
Okay,
answer.
so what's the story?
It's about his daughter, and I read some reviews, and honestly, like, it broke my heart. I was reading some reviews of the album just before I came here tonight, and they were scathing, and it was really hurting my soul, but I was mainly because I was agreeing with most of what they were saying, and I'm like, yes, but I love them. It's like, I love them anyway. I don't care, But there was a blogger who had commented on this song and said, oh, this song sucks, and like basically, oh, he's talking about his lover, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's his daughter. And I tell my daughters all the time, because I play this song in the car. They listen to Bare Naked Ladies a lot, more than they may want to, although I am slowly corrupting them. And I say to them all the time, this is my song for you. And to me, it's just this most beautiful song about children growing up and trying to capture the moment and trying to not let it slip away and to appreciate it when they're young, because they're growing up so fast. And so the line he says, you said don't miss me much. So that's his daughter. She was going to like a summer camp and she said, don't miss me much, and she went to this summer camp and he wrote this whole song about it basically, which I just think is really beautiful. And so I find it really moving, and there's this part of the song later when he talks about her gliding across the floor and it takes his breath away, and I just picture my daughters on their wedding day or whatever. Like, it's a bit cliche, but I guess it's not sung about a lot, and yet it's felt so often, this feeling of like nostalgia before it's even gone, of your children growing up. And I would say too, so this is a Jim Cregan song, so he's written this song, and I always thought of him in the past as just getting like thrown a bone for every album. Like, oh, okay, Jim, righto, you can have a song, and they give him a song. And the one that sticks in my mind is there's a song on an earlier album. I think it's called Spider in My Room. And it's literally just him singing about a spider in his room, and which just makes me feel like he is a massive stoner, and I can only assume that they all are. And I'm sorry if that's slander, although it is legal in Canada, so it's fine. But and so I've always sort of found his songs like irritating, like just skip this and get to the good stuff. And yet on this album, this song and the other one written by him, in a rare moment, I loved both of them, and this one in particular. And it was like this maturity of his songwriting that, okay, we're not talking about spiders in rooms anymore in the corner of the room. We're talking about your daughter, and it's much more resonant for me.
So the next track 8, is called Roll Out, and I think this is probably my least favourite song on the album.
We're gonna roll out, take over this town. We're gonna kill it till the sun comes up. We're gonna roll out, it's about to go down. If you think I'm kidding, you can kiss my dust. I can see you.
All right. I think from the moment it opens, I'm out. Like,
I get it. I did, when I said I was reading some other commentary about the album, I read that someone talked about this as a Shania Twain moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely.
And it is. It's very cheesy, very cliche, but and good. I love Shania
cheesy.
Twain.
It's beyond cheesy. It is like, I mean, come on, the Kiss My Dust line is just, you've given up at that point.
Oh, look, I don't know. You're right. You're not wrong. And this is the thing, when I was reading the reviews and I'm like, oh, you're right. I had enjoyed it up to that point. They really spoiled it for me. So I'm willing to forgive a lot. But yeah, maybe not this one.
Track 9 is called Bylaw.
'Cause there's a bylaw, and I can start work at 7. There's a bylaw, and by law, it's time to wake up Kevin.
So the thing with this song is it's like a comedy song. It's what you'd find on like a comedy album.
But it's the straight man singing the comedy song
so
without
weird.
the fall guy.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of cute. And there's a pun, like bylaw and bylaw.
Yeah. Do you know what's really funny? Again, reading the commentary on this, someone had referenced Tina Fey's commentary about Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, where she said, Alanis, not everything in your journal has to be a song. And basically, Kevin, not everything in your journal has to be a song. It's very Karen vibes. No offense to the beloved Karens.
No, but no one wants to get woken up at 7. I get it.
They don't. And this is the thing though, I don't know, not everything needs to be an epic anthem.
No.
And I
that's
love
fine.
that this is just yes, this is just a little tiny annoying thing, and now I've got a song to back it up.
It's kind of cute. I mean, there's a bridge where he's 7-11. I don't know. It's not for me.
Listen, Kevin's not my
different
fave. I
context.
did say this already. He's not my vibe. Although there's a song coming up of his that I did love. It's this one, I don't know. It's completely ridiculous. It's just a bit of fun. I don't know if you want to read too deeply into it.
Okay, then let's listen to the next song called God Forbid.
God forbid you and I ever find better words to describe how now we can't run and hide.
So this is an interesting one, I think, like lyrically, because I'm not quite sure exactly how to nail it down. So I think the first listen I was thinking, well, this is kind of about lack of communication, about fobbing things off that you don't understand or want to talk about and just saying, oh, God forbid, like I don't want to just deal with that. But there is obviously like a part there where he's talking about like, I don't believe he exists, but I still say, God forbid. So I'm not sure if there is something about struggling with religion or like trying to find religion as a source of kind of understanding or hope and not being able to.
Well, I guess I put my own meaning onto it. And again, like I don't have any reason to believe this from the band themselves. This is just me and my interpretation. But I, again, took this as a COVID pandemic song. So the whole message, and it is like a secular message, I guess, like I don't believe in God, but I still say God forbid about bad things happening. And I guess I resonate with that. I am not a religious person. I have a religious background. You know, I went to Catholic schools, but I'm not a religious person. But there's something comforting, I guess, in that history that you still connect to regardless. And so even to saying something like God forbid, whether you imbue a certain meaning on it or not, you might still connect with that idea. And I guess like I had in my mind this whole scenario where he's singing to someone far away, like a child, like in college or something like that, and saying like, I hope nothing bad is going to happen to you. We're so far apart and there's actually nothing I can do about it right now if something were to happen to you. And whether that's true or not, that's the meaning I took, basically, that if someone is disconnected from you physically, you know, in another place in the world, there's very little you can do except just hope for the best. And I guess when you're desperate, you go that step further, and whether you're religious or not, you might start to pray, or you might start to, I guess, I don't know, reach for something a little bit more to try and feel like you're in control of the situation when you're really not. And if you call it God, that's just because of your upbringing or whatever, but you're reaching out for something maybe a little bit more.
All right, track 11, Paul Chambers.
You have always seen what's beside you. I love the way you put your lemon on your glass. Remember all the nights when we would sit and
So look, I think this is probably my favorite song.
Oh, what a surprise.
I'm a sucker for the
jazz.
Rhodes piano. The lyrics are fine.
Oh, geez,
I like
glowing praise of your favourite song on the album.
There's like Paul Chambers plays the changes, and now we're going through changes. Like it's nice.
What I got a very distinct vibe off of this, and I don't remember if you remember my old boss. Great guy, but he used to just a little bit overshare about how he'd bought this hot tub and how him and his wife used to spend time in the hot tub.
Yeah.
And this song just gives me that vibe. Like, I love the song. It's a sweet song, but there's a little bit of oversharing going on that I'm not comfortable with. Like that I feel like I've been invited into the hot tub with this couple and I'm not cool with it. So there's that. But I do love the song.
Do you think these are like double entendres? I love the way you put your lemon on the glass.
This comes from the guy who's saying, "There's a spider in my room. There's a spider in my room." So no, I don't, thankfully, think that's a double entendre. This is becoming excruciating for me, so let's carry on.
All right, well, we're nearly at the end, you'll be pleased to hear.
I will.
We're up to track 12, The National Park.
Far and away the time will slip. I'm so glad we went on that trip. With all the others afraid of the dark, lying awake in the national park.
This is a similar song in many ways to Big Backyard, in that, like, what you see is what you get. He's remembering a holiday, essentially.
Well, I would assume
Trip
so. Yeah.
to the national park. And he sees a rhinoceros, and now when he's back in the real world, he's reminiscing about the beauty of nature.
I don't know. Like, to me, absolutely it's about the beauty of nature, but there's a very strong undertone here of, I guess, criticism of the destruction of the natural habitats of creatures. So, you know, there's this line about the rhinoceros, you know, that it's the only one left in the wild.
Mm.
And he says, and the wild is 1,000 miles of national park. So it's not really the wild, is it? So I guess that's the whole point of this, this idea that I guess we kid ourselves. We think, you know, we might go on a trip to the national park and kid ourselves, oh, wow, it's a rhinoceros. But like it's basically a glorified zoo.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I found this song very, I guess, melancholy, very wistful, like this idea that it's all sort of shrinking. I find that really moving. And it's a simple message and it's not a new message. But I would say this is one of my favourite songs on the album, which is a big call because it is a Kevin Hearn song and I don't normally enjoy his songs as much as the others. But I think it's a bit dismissive to just sort of say, oh, it's just a little song about he had a nice time on his
I
holiday.
definitely picked up the theme. Yeah, there's definitely that lament at the loss of nature in the world. I guess like for me, it's also a theme that has been done a lot. It didn't seem like there was anything kind of new about it.
I guess. I felt like, I mean, it made me feel like I was there, I guess. I can sort of picture that. I know my dad had this real thing that he wanted to go to like Yellowstone before he died and he didn't quite make it. And I think that there's this element of that, this awe, and there's a part of you that resonates with, you know, the natural world in that way. And so to think about losing it is a bit more, I guess, difficult to comprehend if you have that mindset.
It's like that other song, don't it always seem to go, but you don't know what you got till it's gone.
Big Yellow Taxi.
Big Yellow Taxi, yeah.
One of the best songs ever.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
Don't that song makes me clench my fist so hard. You know what I mean? Just shoot me. Put me out of my misery. Go on.
We're nearly there. Track 13, Man.
We did not have to go track by track.
You say this like on the second last track.
P.S. This is my favourite song. What would you have picked as my favourite song?
That hoedown one.
Oh,
you can eat my dust.
You know what?
Yeah. What?
You can kiss my dust. I do love a bit of Cotton Eye Joe, I do have to say. There's never a time when that's not appropriate to bust out.
I used to lie in bed and still feel the motion only a stone's throw away. When I was a kid, I thought it was the ocean. Now I'm taking on water on a man-made lake. All of the trees beside it.
Okay, so the first maybe 2.5 times I listened to this, I didn't like it. Something about the lyrics or the vocal line.
Or your
I didn't
personality, yeah.
Wow. But then it grew on me, and I agree with you. This is one of the best songs on the album. This is a little bit more of a story and trying to express a loss of youthful naivety, kind of growing up, learning what things are really like. When he was a child, this place seemed magical, and when he grew up, he realized, oh, it's just like a man-made lake.
For me, as a fan, this takes me back to a song called When I Fall, which was written by Ed Robertson as well, which was about a window washer, basically, which just had this depth to it that I'm not a window washer, right? But it just took me there. It made me just feel like a suicidal window washer, basically. And I don't know, this song too, like there's this nostalgia to it, that's totally relatable to anyone. Like you don't have to be there to just really relate to this feeling of lost innocence. And I think the music is beautiful. Yeah, I can listen to this song over and over again. Like I find it really deeply resonant song that most people could probably enjoy. You're talking about how they're just like complete bubblegum pop basically and super optimistic. Like this is a pretty dark song. And the one before too, like, you know, they're talking about some...
Yeah, I think Optimism, I was referring more to, I guess, the opening tracks and the hoedown one. Like where you have to just...
What's more depressing than a hoedown?
And we've reached the end. The last song is called Internal Dynamo.
She knows an internal
This song starts out pretty interesting. I was wondering if they actually sampled Pink Floyd in the intro. And I couldn't put my finger on which song it was, but there was something that felt very familiar there. And then kind of it goes through these stages, remind me of Dire Straits and a band called Air. And then it takes this turn and turns into like this faux Chili Peppers kind of song.
One time, come on. That's right. It's dynamic. Gamma radiation. You wouldn't like me when I'm funky. Come on. Here we go.
And I get the feeling that they were going for an epic song that changes genres and shifts around, but I don't think it really worked. There's just some lyrics in here that are not great. I like you wouldn't like me when I'm funky.
But you wouldn't, so it's fair.
Yeah. I didn't quite get where this is going, and I don't really think this needed to be on the album is my
Yeah,
view
I
of
don't
this.
think you're alone on that.
Yeah.
view. Yeah. I also read somewhere someone describing this as like a song from School of Rock. Like a Jack Black kind of riff, like just I don't hate it. Like it is weird. It's absolutely weird. And it's the kind of song that I'm happy for the album to end on. And just like honestly, I'm not fully ever listening anymore. And I think most people aren't. Like I have, I guess, committed to listening to this album, but generally speaking, I don't just listen. I'm doing other things. And so I'm happy for this song to be in the background while I'm doing other things. But yeah. And what does that say? Like as writers, like they're putting all their rough stuff out there in a way. Like it's sort of unapologetically just like, this is what I wanted to do. So here it is.
I don't know. There's a fine line between rough and just bad. I don't know. This song, a lot of the songs here I think were unapologetic. And they were like, okay, so we're embracing this style and we're going to do it and we know it's cheesy or whatever, but we're going to do it. This one I felt like they were going for something that was a little bit more serious and they just didn't really hit it. They couldn't hit it. They tried to go serious and all they brought was cheese. I don't know if that's the right
Usually
way to put it.
people don't complain when you bring cheese.
Yeah,
But
I know.
no, I see what you're saying. And I think, I don't know, I guess that's a little bit still why I love this band. They just are who they are. And there's this folksy side that isn't my thing, I guess. And it's very much their thing and it's what they vibe with. Like, and because we've been watching The Coronation, we're talking about democracy. And Bare Naked Ladies is a full-blown democracy. They're all songwriters in the Bare Naked Ladies, you know. They're all lead vocalists in the band. There's 4 of them. They've all had their turn being lead vocalists. They've all had their turn writing the songs. And I'm not sure necessarily that that's always the best decision. Like I say this is an Ed Robertson fan, so I'd be happy if the album was all written by him. And yet I do love when there's a bit of counterbalance to that because, a whole album of puns, even for me, might get old. And I did love one of the Jim Cregan songs and I did love one of the Kevin Hearn songs on this album. But then there's a lot of other stuff where it's just like a completely different genre and I'm not sure that it has its place. But who am I to say? It's their band. They do what they want.
All right, so let's bring it home.
Oh, as they say.
So Detour de Force. It's not an album I would have chosen for myself, which I guess is kind of the point.
Kind of the point.
Of Get Wrecked. But I think there was some good songs in there. There was some songs that I just hated. Like I'll state quite simply.
And I have to say that I'm glad that I just put you through that. I feel like there was a bit of justice to be done here with what you
that's
put
fair
me
enough.
through.
That's fair enough. So, Flip and Good Life, and which one was the one where he kisses dust?
Roll Out.
Roll Out, yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't like those ones. I felt they were kind of trying a little bit too hard. But in the second half of the album, there's a few songs that have their moments. Paul Chambers, Man-Made Lake, The National Park, I think you've kind of brought me around to on a little bit.
Good.
And it's a bit of a ride. The positive thing, as I've said, is that they do experiment a lot and they go in and out of a lot of different genres and different styles. Not always well, as we saw in the last song.
what I think I've learned, even just from reflecting on this, because as a fan, I just listen to it and just think it's the best, and it's not till I guess, reflect back with a bit of objectivity that maybe I start to question some of the choices. But what I think I would say I've learned from this as a writer is that the songs where they're really coming from their heart, where they're coming from a real vulnerable place of like personal experience, they're the ones that seem to resonate best. It seems like these ones where it's just written to be poppy or it's written for a certain line or a beat that you might sort of bop along to it but not necessarily enjoy it. And it's the ones like Man-Made Lake in particular for me, Here Together. There's just something that touches your soul, and I think you feel that whether you like the music or not, there's a connection that you sort of can't deny where it's like someone's just told you something really personal about themselves and maybe it's an uncomfortable moment, but like you felt it.
Yeah.
And as a human being, you respond. And I think like for writers, that's a sign for us to write the things that are true, to write the things that come from our soul. And that if you do that you will probably connect. So I think it's safe to say that the Bare Naked Ladies are dorks, right? Which is what I love about them. But they all met at music camp. This was like during high school. And later, I understand that Stephen Page had some tickets to a Bob Dylan concert and he invited Ed Robertson to the concert with him. And they got bored at the concert. They got bored at the Bob Dylan concert. And so they were pretending they were like critics, like music critics, and just doing a running commentary. And they were inventing some fictional band names. And one of them was the Bare Naked Ladies, which they later took on. But I just thought it was a bit interesting because I know we'll probably be talking about Bob Dylan and his influence on lyrics.
Well, I guess let's talk about that because we wanted to discuss, I guess in the context of this album, songwriting. Good songwriting, bad songwriting, what we can learn from songwriting as writers. And speaking of Bob Dylan, he recently now is me getting old, but in 2016 he won the Nobel Prize for Literature to a fair amount of controversy at the time.
Scandal.
It was a bit of a scandal. So what are your thoughts on him winning the Nobel Prize?
I love it. Why would you be offended? I guess you'd be offended like, oh, it's super hard to write a novel and he just wrote a song. Is that the idea? I don't know.
There are two questions there. Like the first question is, should a singer-songwriter win the Nobel Prize for literature? I think a lot of people pointed to the fact of like the origins of literature being in the spoken word. Like you go back to Homer and not that Homer. And like there's this oral tradition of storytelling that precedes writing where people had to memorize stories in the form of poems and recite them, and there may or may not have been music involved. And that's kind of the origins of storytelling. And when it's only with the invention of writing that it became kind of written down. But that is like what literature is. Like it has the word letters in it and it comes from writing. And I think Bob Dylan in his acceptance speech, which he didn't deliver himself, made a point about what is literature and kind of echoing these kinds of thoughts. And one of the points he made was, well, is Shakespeare was meant to be performed. So is that literature? It's not meant to be read, but who would argue that Shakespeare is not literature? Which is an interesting point. And I think, you have to accept that the spoken word in various forms is also a form of literature.
There's just way too much overlap to really start drawing a distinction.
There is a lot of overlap. And I mean, if poetry is
exactly
literature, which it is, and part of that is performance as well. So I think you can definitely make a good argument that a singer-songwriter can win and should win under certain circumstances the Nobel Prize. But the second question is, should Bob Dylan specifically win it? And I think there are two sides to that. One, like, yes, he's had a major contribution, a massive contribution to music and songwriting, and I guess taken it to a different level. And you can't put all of this behind him, but in the early 60s, it was a very different time for songwriting, and he really did take it to a different place. I think one of the criticisms was, well, yeah, on the one hand, yes, Bob Dylan you could point to as someone who achieved a lot and is deserving of the prize, but at the same time doesn't really need the prize. Like, he doesn't need the money.
You don't go, oh, he doesn't need it. On what criteria is that? Ruling people out because they're too good?
No,
That doesn't make
it's
any
not that.
sense.
I guess it's an unusual decision on that basis because you have a prize there that often is given to someone for recognition that they may not otherwise have gotten.
I mean, I don't know that that's the point of it. I mean, I feel like that's a big assumption that they're giving it to bestow recognition that was not otherwise there. I don't know that that's the point of it. It's to recognize a specific achievement. So the achievement that they're recognizing for Bob Dylan was for creating new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he won it for specifically. And I feel like, I mean, that's true. But I mean, he himself was reflecting on why he would win it, why a songwriter would win it. And he wasn't the first songwriter to win it.
Mm-hmm.
There was an Indian songwriter called, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing, but Rabindranath Tagore, who won it like in the early 1900s, I believe. But I think that was more poetry.
Yeah.
What he was winning it for, despite the fact he was a songwriter and it was songs that he was writing poetry about. I mean, it was poetry essentially that he was winning it for. So there's still a little bit of a step there to be giving it to Bob Dylan. But then having said that, Bob Dylan's songs are quite narrative often. So, well, poetic certainly, but narrative as well, and more so than maybe other musicians.
Yeah, look, I think if you're going to give it to anyone who's a songwriter, it would be Bob Dylan. And look, to be clear, I support the decision. I mean, it was definitely a surprise decision for a lot of people, just given it had been 100 years since a songwriter had received the award. So it's not like there was a lot of precedent for it. And it definitely got people talking.
I guess what I love is that it's recognizing that there is a link between these things, that songwriting is just another form of storytelling, just like fiction writing, or, you know, it's recognized fiction, it's recognized nonfiction, it's recognized poetry and songwriting as well. And all of these things are writing of words. And so therefore they're always going to have really strong linkages, and certainly very strong linkages between poetry and songwriting in particular. Did you know, #fun fact, that Alfred Nobel himself decided to just try his hand at fiction writing when he was...
In addition to making dynamite.
Just in addition to all of his many special talents, just towards the end of his life, you know, in his final years, he's like, you know what, everyone's got a book in them. I'm going to have a crack.
It wasn't a children's book, was it?
Oh, it was a children's book. Speaking of, I shared with you, didn't I, the Jamie Oliver.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly. I mean, he doesn't have enough money. Okay, if Jamie Oliver wins the Nobel Prize, then there will be some kind
There'll
of
be blood on the streets.
uprising.
Where songwriting separates from things like poetry is that the music does often come first. And in fact, the lyrics are not even essential to music. Like, there's a lot of genres and styles that don't have lyrics. But so that's a big part of it, is that when you're writing even poetry, you're starting with a blank piece of paper, basically, or an idea. But when you're writing a song, you have something that already has maybe some sort of character, some sort of idea, some sort of emotion that comes from it that you're drawing from immediately. Like, you're not starting with nothing.
I think that's what's interesting and distinct about songwriting from fiction writing, for example. And I'm sure the process for songwriting sometimes starts with the lyrics and sometimes starts with the music. In fact, I know that, of course, that's the case. But as a listener of music, you are at least almost always getting the music at the same time, if not before the lyrics start. And so there's a scene setting that happens that, I don't know, maybe you get that with fiction writing from the book cover, for example, like a kind of scene setting. Like, I know if I've got this kind of misty, monotone image of a shed in the distance, it's probably some kind of thriller. You know what I mean? And, you know, by the author, what you may be expecting. But I do think that's something that's a bit different about songwriting, that the music is going to set the scene for you. And if your lyrics really mismatched your music and you kind of, I don't know, catfish the audience, it would be a really jarring experience. Like, people sort of listen and expect, like, if you're hearing country music, you're expecting a certain thing. If you're hearing some real boppy pop sort of opening, you're expecting what's going to happen next. And priming yourself and listening or not listening on that basis too. like switching off the radio immediately if it's not what you want to hear.
Yeah, I kind of agree. But so from my personal experience and from what I've also read about songwriters, I mean, usually, like I would say 90% of the time, the music would come first.
That's a big call.
I don't think it is. I think that's part of the process that you would have to start with the music, or at least some beginnings of a song.
I don't know.
To
I
feed
don't
the
know.
lyrics.
90%'s a big call. I mean, I feel like for some songwriters, the lyrics would come first.
No, for some, but I think it's a vast minority.
Okay.
It's much more intuitive to start with music and build from there. And okay, so I'm thinking about, there's this recent documentary called Get Back by Peter Jackson was the director, and they restored a lot of Beatles footage from the era of Let It Be. And it's a great documentary. It's like one of the top 5 things I've ever seen. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But in it you actually see the writing process take place.
Amazing.
In basically as it did with full video. They'd recorded all these sessions of all the band together kind of working on these songs. So you see it. You see how he comes up with it, and obviously he's one songwriter.
In like 2 seconds.
Well, they cut it together and they take stuff out. It seems like it's happening immediately. But it's such an intuitive process that's different from writing fiction or even poetry. It's almost like the lyrics are in there and there is like a perfect set of lyrics or sounds that fit the music that you come up with just by like
feeling the music kind of
feeling
thing.
it out in a way that, there's that Roman concept of the genius, something that lives inside you, that the thoughts come out that is not yourself. It's very much that process where you have to turn off any kind of analytical or thinking mind that you have and just make random sounds and like
until it sounds
come
right
out,
kind of thing.
Until you
to
get
just
some
like
words together.
Let it be.
Exactly. to get kind of a string of words out together that actually sound like they fit in the song.
Yeah.
And from there, what's the next line? What's the next line?
I mean, yes, 100%. That's one way to do it. I don't think that's always the way to do it, but yes, for sure.
I agree it's not always the way to do it, but I think it's by far the most common way.
And I think that's another thing that's distinct between songwriting and fiction writing, for example, this real collaboration. And that's not to say, like, of course, as fiction writers, you collaborate. If you have an editor, if you have beta reading friends, if you have a partner that you write with, there's a collaborative sort of experience there, or say you've got a writing group that you share with or what have you, but not in the same way as music. There's this jam session kind of thing to it that I don't think we have. Like even you and I who have written together for writing comps and, we're brainstorming together. It's not this jam session where it's like you add and then I add and we harmonize, and I think that's something that's really unique and special. And
it's hard to find as well, even for musicians, because not every songwriting combo is actually going to come up with anything.
That's it. Like you'd have to really find your people to be able to do that. And the people who complement you and complement like what you're trying to achieve, that must be really rare to find that. And obviously when they do, like that's when they make wonderful things. And I think even with pop music, which gets a lot of bad rap, I guess, about being just produced, but it really is a collaboration. Like the producers really are making it saleable and making it like this bubblegum pop that everyone's going to love. Like that's not just the singer who's doing that. There's a lot of post-production that goes into that to make that really palatable, to make that something that everyone's going to have stuck in their head for the next 6 weeks. And I love that. Like I love that sort of thing. And I think you love it or hate it, but it's true of all types of music that there is this collaborative process that creates a single whole. And the songwriter, the lyricist is just one component of that.
Yeah, that's true. But with music as well, I think that there is sometimes a too many cooks effect. Like if too many people are involved, and sometimes you do get the most kind of clear or pure pieces when it is one primary vision, say, of the song that's being supported by other people. You were saying earlier with respect to the Bare Naked Ladies about saying something that people connect with, saying something that's meaningful to you and having that then be something that's understood by a lot of people. And I think sometimes if you have that's the reason why I don't like a lot of pop music. Like it's very generic and it's very polished to the point where it loses a lot of what may have made it interesting to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a risk of going too far down that path.
If we're talking about what songwriting can teach us as fiction writers, I think one thing that's probably quite similar across both is this handling of universal themes.
Mm-hmm.
So for songwriting, like love, like that's just such a hugely maybe overdone theme in songwriting. And yet every time there's a new song, it seems very new and fresh. And I think as writers sometimes, and I'm speaking for myself here, I can get quite hung up on the idea that my idea is not original enough, that it's not, it's all been done before. But these are universal themes for a reason, and they can still be resonant and you can still have a new take on it 1,000,000 times over. And so, nothing's stopping these songwriters writing more and more songs about falling in love, heartbreak, whatever, what it's like to be in love or what it's like to not be. And so similarly in writing, I guess there's just no limit to how many times we can come at these universal themes and just give it a new spin.
So there's a quote, I guess it's a quote that I always think about with songwriting, but I haven't been able to find the original quote. But I read it maybe 20 years ago on the internet.
Paraphrase for us.
And I've been thinking about it. And I'm pretty sure it was Paul Simon, and I don't have the exact words, but it may have been someone else. He said or may not have said something along the lines of the trick to songwriting is mixing high language and low language, like the colloquial with the wordy or the Latinate kind of language. And I found that happens a lot, not only in good songwriting, but also in good writing. Because if you try to be too wordy and if you try to be too fancy, you can come across as pretty pretentious and dry.
Totally.
And just having something to temper that with just gives the listener something to easily connect to.
So question then, because talking of the Bare Naked Ladies and the song 1 Week, which was basically their biggest hit, and they were mystified by that. And there is a song on this album, where they talk about their history and they're like, it wasn't even funny, made money by the ton, right? Talking about 1 week. He wrote that song in a few minutes. Yep. He was literally just riffing, talking about stuff that in the 90s was very relatable. He talks about Sting and his tantric obsession and he talks about Leanne Rimes and
it's all about value.
Yeah. So, but I think maybe that's what it was. Now that you're saying this, maybe that's what it was. There's these pop culture references and just real, there's an X-Files reference. There's all this stuff that's very 90s. And then there's something a little bit more that it's kind of, you can't grasp it exactly. You can imagine what they mean and you can interpret what they mean, but they're not laying it out for you completely. And maybe that's what connected, because I think they were mystified. Why is this suddenly this huge hit? This isn't our best work. It's stupid. It's silly. Chickadee China, the Chinese chicken. I mean, that's the vague bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't call it highbrow. It's absolutely not highbrow, but there's something kind of mystical about it. It's not laid out for you about what that means.
No, I think that's really important. What I think of as good songwriting does have a little bit of mystery in it and a little bit of ambiguity.
Poetry, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something that we as fiction writers can learn from that. And maybe it's more true in flash fiction, for example, and we've talked about this before, where you're a bit more vague and people are interpreting and putting their own meaning on things. But also even in novel form, step back from it and acknowledge the fact that whoever is reading this is going to come and fill in the blanks themselves. And so I think probably in songwriting more than anywhere else, and maybe poetry, but I guess in a more mainstream way, songwriting, that you don't actually know what they're talking about a lot of the time. Sometimes you do. Sometimes Miley Cyrus has a beef with Liam Hemsworth. Sometimes you know that. Sometimes Alanis Morissette has a beef with Uncle Joey from Full House. But other times you don't know what they're talking about. And all you can do is guess, like I have with the Bare Naked Ladies, and filled in the blanks and enjoyed it for that reason. Other times it's frustrating. I want to know, I need to know what this song's about. And yet you don't. And there's something about that. Sometimes it's the fact that you can make it your own that makes it more meaningful to you.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Leaving the listener with something to think about.
Yeah.
You need just something that you can walk away from and go, well, what were you trying to say?
Or
Let me think about
what
that.
do I want you to be trying to say? Like, I mean, there's countless songs where you want to insert yourself in it. Like, this is my breakup, or this is my success, or this is my, like, you become the protagonist in the story, you know, and they allow that by leaving a lot of room for interpretation. And I know there's plenty of songs that are about men that I would take on as my own song, for example, because I resonate with it. And so there's this element where I think songwriters probably do it better than novelists sometimes, of like just accepting that it's mystical and that people are going to make it their own. And you kind of put it out in the universe, and then it's out there, and that people are going to consume it however they consume it. And I think for novelists, sometimes there's this element of still control. Like, I want to control the narrative. I want people to know what I'm trying to say, and I want people to read it a certain way, instead of really just letting it be 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people.
I think songwriting is probably the only medium where you can pretty much give up any hope of the listener or the reader understanding what you're saying, and it's still being okay.
But do you ever, like, I am sick for going onto songmeanings.com. I need to know. I want to know, like, it's important to me, and I want to know why they wrote. It's like part of their story and part of how the song came to be. And I am more often than not disappointed to not know.
Well, it's usually people kind of speculating about it.
Like, I can do that.
Yeah.
I want an interview with the artist every time where they give me their entire backstory of how they. I really do.
It's like when a movie leaves something ambiguous, or a novel, and then people are like, what did you mean? And then, you know, whoever
like
created it is like, well, dude, that's the point, is that it's up to you.
I know. It's like when they whip back the curtain on The Wizard of Oz. I know. But, like, I don't mind The Wizard of Oz. He's kind of funny. Anyway, I want to know is what I'm trying to say every time. And I don't think necessarily it loses its meaning. I think you can gain meaning from knowing why a song was created the way it was. But, of course, it would limit its reach. It would limit how resonant it becomes for people. And I say all this as a control freak novelist. So this is my problem. I'm not a songwriter.
So my counterpoint, I guess, is my favorite Beatles song is I'm the Walrus. And the lyrics make no sense, and they're not supposed to make sense. And if you ask John Lennon, like, which many people did, what do the lyrics mean? They don't mean anything. Like, they are
amazing.
They're just great lyrics for that song because they happen to sound good. They're crazy, but if you try to, like, speculate about who the walrus is, then you're kind of doing it wrong. Like, you're on the wrong track. And I think
you just got to smoke a lot of weed.
Well, you just have to,
and just
you have to
sit
enjoy,
there and bask in it.
You have to enjoy the imagery and the craziness and the fact that it doesn't make sense. That's harder to do with a novel. Like, to write a novel that is just incomprehensible. A poem, you might be able to do a little bit, but there has to be something there. And I think it's something that only lyrics can get away with, is just making zero sense, yet being evocative with the music. They give you something more than the music would. Like, that song is much better because of the lyrics. Yeah. Even though the lyrics don't really, they're not speaking to anything in particular. They're just crazy.
It's like just an abstract painting.
Yeah.
Like, it's adding color, but not in a way that's creating a cohesive whole. So
you recommended Detour de Force. And that means it's my turn to recommend something for you. So I'm not going to go with one movie. I'm going to go with 3 movies.
Okay.
But I think they're 3 movies that I think that you'll enjoy. I enjoyed them, which is like, doesn't mean anything.
No, that's alarming, if anything.
Yeah. So it's the trilogy by director Richard Linklater, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight.
Ethan Hawke, right?
Ethan Hawke.
I can get on board with Ethan Hawke.
And one of the characters is a writer from memory, so there's that. It's a love story. It's a romance story over 3 parts. And it's a rare trilogy where I think all 3 parts are equally strong.
Okay.
And they deal with different stages of the relationship.
Great. Can't wait.
And that brings us to the end of another episode. A reminder, if you haven't already, which you should have, go to the website, notquiterightpodcast.com, and register for the Not Quite Right prize for flash fiction. And until next time, write on.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to Not Quite Right. If you'd like to reach us via email or follow us on social media, you can find all the links on our website, notquiterightpodcast.com. That's WRITE. And if you enjoyed the show, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcasting app.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
With an opening of the robes, King Charles is just flashing the congregation as we speak.
A little black bra with those tassels on the nipples and black panties with suspenders.
Turn to the camera, a cheeky little shimmy. It's a very somber moment.
The choir boys have seen it all before.